The Snoopgate saga involving Apple phones of certain opposition leaders in the country has now got a new twist today. The BJP claimed that one of the NGOs that was mentioned in that Apple notification, which alerted the potential hack victims, the hack targets as they were, to get in touch with a group. One of the groups that was named in that threat notification was Access Now. Access Now is a George Soros funded NGO which has tentacles across the world. So far, we have not heard from Apple directly on whether they have a legitimate tie-up with Access Now. What is the nature of that tie-up? Why are they in cahoots with a George Soros funded NGO? And what exactly does Access Now do for potential hack victims, as was the case with some of these opposition leaders? Or was this notification itself some kind of a mischief played by a Soros-linked entity? So is this a valid claim by the BJP, or is the BJP simply using all of this bogey of Soros and Access Now to divert from the central issue, and that is that all of these opposition leaders were victims of a state-sponsored attack, and they say that state-sponsored attack was at the behest of the BJP NDA government at the center. But first, the story.
Look into the credentials of Access Now. It is a George Soros funded entity. Connect the dots and you will find that the players behind Pegasus are the same players who are now claiming that they are being snooped on in the Apple saga.
This is the most convoluted nonsense that I've heard. Maybe in the past decade, since this story about hacking of telephones and then hacking of mobile apps actually became a threat.
All right, so first let's take a look at what is it that the BJP is claiming and how are they making this Soros connection. Now, number one, the claim is that Soros is the reason behind this threat notification by Apple. The second claim is that there is a George Soros-funded non-profit organization called Access Now, which is mentioned in that threat notification in the last paragraph, the threat notification that was sent by Apple. There is a follow-up email that's been sent by Apple to all the potential victims of this hack, which explicitly mentions in the last paragraph, asks them to get in touch with this NGO called Access Now, which is linked to George Soros. He's one of the big funders to Access Now. In addition, the funding is also for the organization's digital security helpline. That is something that is also mentioned in this email and this message alert that was sent to these targets. And claim number 5 by the BJP is that it's not just Apple or this threat alert, but that Access Now has a network that is operating in India against the Modi government. And the claim number 6 is that some opposition leaders also have links with George Soros. They particularly cited Rahul Gandhi as having met with, in the past, individuals who are directly or indirectly linked with George Soros. But it didn't stop there. In fact, the BJP's Amit Malviya went on to further claim that the Congress Party's link with Soros-funded Access Now. This is what he tweeted. And I'm going to read out our Motorola tweet of the day.
Hello, Moto.
All right, Mr. Malviya has gone on to say that the Congress Access Now link deepens further. Other than George Soros' Open Society Foundation, Access Now website lists Omidyar. Now, Omidyar is also a prominent donor. It funds media organizations, among other things, here in India and around the world. Along with Omidyar, there is Ford Foundation, Global Affairs, which is the government of Canada, and government of Germany as other contributors. Apple, incidentally, is not one of their major sponsors. One would wonder, what is the Congress link with Omidyar the other prominent donor. He goes on to say, Mr. Malviya, in that tweet, Bharat Pandey, who leads Omidyar's initiative, was special advisor to Jairam Ramesh when he was rural development minister in the Congress's government, and now he manages the Congress's communication cell. Does it get any more murkier than this? The Congress is evidently leaning on everyone from George Soros to Omidyar to muddy the public discourse in a bid to undermine India's democracy. So, this is the BJP's claim. Like I said, you can or cannot take this at face value, but this is a claim that's been made basis one of the paragraphs in this threat notification that's been sent to many of these opposition leaders. Now, if there really is a Soros link, and that is a matter of investigation that has to be established, if there indeed is, then here is why that is problematic. Now, not long ago, he was surrounded by many controversies here in India. There was a war of words that broke out when Rahul Gandhi met with Sunita Vishwanath, who is a close aide of Soros, working for the Soros organization for Afghan women, allegedly receiving funds from Soros-funded entities. Soros's NGO, Open Society Foundation, and its vice president, Salil Shetty, was one of the people who walked with Rahul Gandhi. This happened in October last year during the Bharat Jodo Yatra in the Karnataka leg. George Soros in 2020 had announced a plan to set up a $1 billion fund to fight some of these strongmen nationalist governments, including the Modi government here in Delhi. Amid the storm over the CAA back in 2020, Soros had said that the biggest and most frightening setback to open societies comes from India, where a democratically elected Modi is creating a Hindu nationalist state. India had been watching out for Soros and his organization, the Open Society Foundation, and it was even put on a watch list by the Home Ministry in the year 2016. So that brings us to our debate topic tonight. Soros in the Snoopgate. Is it BJP's claim, and is the claim valid, or is that simply a diversionary tactic from the meat of the matter, and that is someone was snooping on these leaders, some state-sponsored attack was due on these leaders. Who was behind that attack?
Hello, Moto.
All right, joining us now on the talking point this evening, Basuri Swaraj is spokesperson of the BJP, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, spokesperson of the Congress Party, Apar Gupta is an advocate, and Arvind Gupta is head and co-founder of Digital India Foundation. Let me start with Basuri Swaraj. The BJP has been making these claims, Mr. Malviya, other spokespersons and leaders in your party have been making this claim that Access Now, which is mentioned in this threat notification, is linked to George Soros. This entire thing was orchestrated, funded by George Soros. On what basis are you making that claim?
I think before I answer that, let me just get into the heart of the meat of the matter itself. So, Jaka, as you know, this is going to turn out to be another Pegasus 2.0. You know, even 2021, the opposition had accused the BJP of snooping, and a Supreme Court investigative committee was set up. And what was found by the Supreme Court was that not a single opposition device had the Pegasus software. In fact, there might have been traces of certain malware which can be attributed to the internet browser history of the opposition, which made them susceptible to cyber attacks. Now, similarly, if you remember, yesterday, when this particular alert sent, I have with me a document which I've downloaded from the Apple support. So this is the company document, because the opposition, I know, that keeps on, sometimes they rely on what Apple alerts are, but then they say that Apple has not issued any clarification. And before I answer on Soros, this is very important. The last line of the company document says, detecting such attacks relies on threat intelligence signals that are often imperfect and incomplete. It's possible that some Apple threat notifications may be false alarms, and this is Apple's document. This is easily available on their website. This is it's about Apple threat notifications and protecting against state-sponsored attacks. Now, answering the questions on George Soros. See, it is very well known that Soros has been trying to undermine Indian democracy, and his hatred and his dissent qua the Modi government is very, very obvious. The statement made by Mr. Amit Malviya today, which you even read out, the fact that there is not only Soros connection, but there is also the Umidyar connection of funding. All of these are very, very serious allegations. They're not merely hogwash. The government of India is extremely serious about security protocols as well as privacy. And therefore, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, the Honorable Union Minister, has already said that the Indian government is going to go to the bottom of it and is going to investigate. They have even asked Apple to join the investigation with all the relevant material.
Okay.
What Mr. Malviya has said today is also something very serious that needs to be investigated on this particular aspect. It is not just that Apple sent out these alerts to the opposition leaders in India. 150 countries, individuals from 150 countries received these alerts. But once again, if you remember, and I know this reporting was from your channel itself, Apple's statement was that Apple does not attribute the threat notification to any specific state-sponsored attacker, which means this alert was not based either on the identity of the attacker or on the source of the attack.
Okay, so let me ask Mohan Kumaramangalam and let me walk up to the wall. Mohan Kumaramangalam, the contention is this. Forget about George Soros or any other entity. Why should Apple, which is the world's leading phone manufacturer, have to depend on an NGO for its tech support? This is a technical problem. Many of these MPs have received a tech notification from Apple saying you are potentially going to be the victim of a state-sponsored attack. Please explain to our viewers, how can an NGO be the go-to for the world's most premier technology company for a tech problem on their platform, on their devices?
Zaka, first, I don't think Apple is outsourced its tech support, and I think you're making a leap of faith there based on one assumption made by Mr. Amit Malviya, who put it out there. Let me say that this isn't the first threat notification that Apple has actually sent out. Apple and Google both sent a similar threat notification back in 2021, right after Apple actually sued Pegasus, sued NSO, the maker of Pegasus, for what happened and the exposure that the Apple devices had to take when the Pegasus scandal broke out. It instituted this mechanism of threat notifications. Now, when you're sending threat notifications, there is a certain threshold, I imagine, that Apple would use to actually send these out. Otherwise, you would be creating on a much more regular basis. You would have to imagine that Apple saw something here which made it send this particular notification out, considering the last one they sent was 2 years ago. Now, obviously, you cannot, with a 100% definitive way, say that this particular threat has come from someplace. But, Masuri very elegantly read out one part of the sentence and left the other one out, where Apple says that it's because state-sponsored hacks are incredibly sophisticated and hard to detect. That is why they can't be sure, and they can't actually talk about the source of the attack. She also talked a lot about Pegasus. She actually said this is Pegasus 2.0. I agree with her. Just like in Pegasus 1.0, where she just chose to say that the Supreme Court said that there was no Pegasus on devices. One of the things that the Supreme Court did not do, even though the justices presiding said in open court that they would like to do, is release the detailed report, the investigative report, because there are dissenters in that report, one of whom actually came out, I think it was Arvind Narayanan, who came out and said that for the journalist phones, 2 journalist phones that he examined, he found that there were Pegasus on them. And you need an independent third party like Amnesty Labs or international safety cybersecurity organizations to look at the methodology followed in that particular report. For some reason, the report was never made public. Until date, we don't have a definitive answer. Let me also say that any tech product which is designed to do snooping or which is designed to be intrusive will never be able to be detected with 100% because they pride themselves on the fact that they don't leave any digital signature when they're conducting this.
But you still haven't answered the question I asked, which is, why would the world's biggest phone manufacturing company, tech company, outsource its tech support to an NGO? But be that as it may, let me go to, just give me 1 second, Mohan, because, 1 second, let me go to Arvind Gupta, because, he's got limited time on the debate tonight. So, Arvind Gupta, the fundamental issue is here. I don't think most people care whether Soros is linked or XYZ is linked. The point is, were these opposition members the victims of a state-sponsored attack or not? And B, there is one very basic question that all of them are asking is, why is it that 95% of them happen to be from the opposition? Even in the case of Pegasus, I think about 170, 175 people were quote unquote allegedly snooped upon, including union ministers, people in government, people who have nothing to do with politics as well. But in this case, it's by and large only opposition leaders. Why is that? Isn't that suspicious is the question they're asking. Arvind Gupta.
Well, let me start by saying, you know, I've had the pleasure of working with Apple very closely in the past, and Apple doesn't outsource these activities so easily and does not disclose how it, does this threat intelligence in the current scenario that we are in today. But I'll make some 4 or 5 points. The opposition leaders also have to explain why they have been so casual with their own cybersecurity. I know one of them has gone on record saying that she, casually shared her login ID and password with I don't know how many people. You have to understand, Jacob, that there is this it could originate from anywhere. If you have traveled to a suspicious territory, you remember the times you used to travel outside, credit cards used in certain countries, you would get an alert the moment you returned back. So origination of this system, and that is what Apple has to really participate, and the union minister has already talked about, that they have to come and say whether this originated, what was the timing it originated in. But they're probably setting out this new threat intelligence system, and they saw some suspicious activities. Maybe their login IDs are being done from India, from outside India, from Middle East, and many places else in a very short period of time. They have some malware that is installed. There is a bunch of things that go into threat intelligence like this. And as Mohan rightly said, I mean, this is a very sophisticated process. Neither Mr. Mohan or anybody else actually knows what goes on behind for Apple to make this judgment and send it out. But I personally feel that there is, India, 2% of people probably give or take use Apple phones, 98% use Android. And these security mechanisms do send out constant alerts. Here, I think the MPs have a little bit of blame on themselves. They've been, in some of the MPs at least, have been very casual with the approach that they've been sharing their passwords. Two, there is a lot of definition that is involved. State-sponsored, there is a lot of extraterrestrial actors today which behave like state bodies, and they're very, very sophisticated in the way they operate. So we have to
Arvind, I come back to the question that I asked you as well as to Mohan. How does any of this explain why a Soros-funded NGO is part of that last paragraph of this threat notification?
And that is the suspect part, because I also checked the last 2 years of donations that and the funding that Access Now has received. I don't see a mention of Apple there. So that is a clarification Apple will have to give. But I did see a lot of money coming, and at least a lot of bulk of the money coming in from OSF, which you have talked liberally on this show already, from Omidyar and from Ford Foundation, by the way. Mm-hmm. And these are not lovers of democracy in our country. So I think there is a question mark there. I cannot point out whether they have a role or not.
Okay.
That's for Apple to clarify. But there is definitely a very casual approach to cybersecurity that some of these people have had, and it's probably a result of that, or a combination of travel and using phones in troubled geographies in a very short span of time.
Apar Gupta is also joining us. Apar, explain this to our viewers in layman terms. Is this because there were some, SMSs or some WhatsApp forwards that these MPs and leaders clicked on that led to this malware attack on their phones? Or is it, as Arvind Gupta said, they possibly traveled to dangerous territories in the last few months and therefore they have this? But again, none of this explains, Apar Gupta, how they could have been potential victims of a quote-unquote state-sponsored hack attack. And what that state is has also not been defined by Apple. It could be the Indian state, it could be the Chinese state, it could be the Pakistani state. Who knows?
So, Zaka, for my response, I'll first just like to take the viewers very simply with what has happened, because they may not have context. They must be just tuning into this broadcast. The first thing which has happened is people who own iPhones and these happen to be members of parliament who are primarily from the opposition, have gotten a specific alert from Apple. This is not a general advisory, and I'm making this clear because yesterday in the press statement by Minister Vaishnav, he stated it is an advisory. It is not an advisory. It is an alert. It has been sent to specific people. This alert by itself links to a help page. That help page provides in great detail that they immediately need to put their iPhones into what is called as lockdown mode. So this is a serious notification. This is not something which can be passed off as something which is clicking on a link just casually, or some third party private vendor which is trying to get into it. And in fact, it becomes very clear when you read the text itself, because it starts with the first sentence: alert, state sponsored attackers may be attacking your phone. And here, throughout the notification, if you look at the help section again, it then goes on to state that they cannot reasonably state which is this state sponsored attacker. And secondly, as much as it may be a false flag, they are not technically sure who has done this or what has done this. They are not going to provide further details.
What's then the access now connection?
Now let me answer, Zaka, because you've been asking everyone, why is this? Apple is a company which is primarily making profit on the basis of sales of these phones and availability of them in jurisdictions in which it needs to also maintain privacy. It's balancing this. It's balancing it in large markets like China as well as in India. And the possibility of the Indian government being involved in it is certainly something no foreign corporate entity will take a risk on. This is a very reasonable thing to do. Secondly, I'd just like to state two things with respect to the Pegasus hearings. The first thing is the Pegasus case is still pending. The second is that the government till date has not clearly stated in Pegasus, and neither has it stated in this instance. It has not procured spyware or used it. If you see the tweets of Minister Vaishnav, he is not saying clearly, we have not done this. And the investigation needs to include the cabinet secretary as well as members of the government, because this is not a technical investigation. It needs to be queried. Has the government actually used it? You get your answer. If they put it in affidavit, yes, we did it, or no, we did not. But this question has not been asked and not been answered even to the Supreme Court of India.
All right. I am also joined by Sanjeev Sanyal, former member in the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. He was one of the first prominent people on Twitter to point this out. Thanks very much, Mr. Sanyal, for speaking with us. I want to first ask you, and a lot of Twitter users have asked you this as well. You're not a tech expert. Why were you so curious in getting to the back of this whole Access Now business? And what is Access Now's connection, if at all? There has to be a connection to Apple for you to say that this is some part of some sinister plan that the opposition leaders thought of, and so on and so forth. But first, explain what got you curious about this.
Well, you're right. I'm not a technology expert in any way, so I have brought out questions that have nothing to do with the technology. So you can ask the others about the technology. I'm just asking some common sense questions. So first of all, if you will permit me, I'll give you a list of things that look entirely weird. First of all, when the alert goes out, it states in a very strange language that you have been attacked essentially because you are a person either doing something important or because of the things that you do. Now, this is not the kind of language that a technology company says. I mean, it's why should it care who you are and what you do as being a case for an attack? It should only care about whether or not it sold a product and it's getting attacked or not. Secondly, it then says that if you have a problem, you need to speak to experts. It doesn't say go and talk to so-and-so person in our technology support team. It does not give any link to anything in Apple. Now, this is almost like Maruti. If you have a breakdown, saying that, if you have a breakdown in your car, go and please talk to a good mechanic. No, it will always say, please contact so-and-so person in Maruti. So instead, what it does, even more weird, is that it goes ahead and then it states that, look, not only are we not going to connect you to any experts in our world, we are going to connect you, and they give a link to a NGO, which is not a technology NGO, it's actually an advocacy group. which is politically linked to all kinds of things and is funded, by the way, by Soros. It's funded by Omidyar, by the Canadian government of all things, and Ford Foundation. And so this is the people who are funding an agency which is outside of Apple. And according to this
No, but
alert,
Sanjeev,
people should go and
one second.
contact this agency.
One
Why?
second. No, no. When you say it takes you to the page of this NGO for whatever support you require, are you asking questions of Apple or are you asking questions of the people to whom this threat notification was sent?
I am making some very simple, common sense observations. Apple should perhaps answer this in the first instance, because the notifications came from something that seemed to be coming from a Apple source. Now, if it is an impersonation, then in which case Apple should state it's an impersonation, which it has not done.
Yeah.
If it is not an impersonation, then Apple should state to us why is it that a technology company has outsourced its security features to a non-technology NGO funded by all these other groups.
No, so speakers in the earlier part of the program, their contention was this is not tech support that's been outsourced. This is the nature of the work of the individuals who've been targeted. If they need support, then contact
So
access now is what their claim is.
No, this is clever by half. Because remember, it's all right for a tech company to outsource, say, fact checking. That's not a core activity of
Yep.
But on the other hand, security is a core activity. I mean, come on, the security of the OS system is surely something of serious importance to Apple, and it can't possibly be outsourcing it. And if it is, then it should come out and say that, look, we have outsourced tech support to somebody else. This is tech support. If your phone is getting hacked by somebody, supposedly a state, it could be any state, but anyway, let's say it is a state. Then it's a serious business. But at no point in time did they say anything about how they're going to support it. So no, you don't please go to this NGO to help you. You've got to be kidding me.
Okay, well, let me get one final word from you before I go back to the panel. What then explains, neither is Apple an investor in this access now, nor is Mr. Soros an investor in Apple. So what then explains the linkages?
I have no idea. I'm just asking common sense questions. Surely Apple is, at least in the first instance, does not seem to be one of the funders of
correct
Access Now. It is all these other agencies: Soros, Omidyar, Ford Foundation, Canadian government, German government, by the way, as well. None of this information, by the way, is difficult to get. I mean, I only got into this because I looked while sipping my morning coffee at this issue and just went to Access Now website and began, following various leads. And I thought, I was quite surprised that nobody else was raising this issue. So I tweeted about it and raised it.
All right. We'll see what comes of it. Thank you very much, Sanjeev Sania. Let me go back to the panel on this one. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, it does seem quite odd that you have an NGO that is partly taking care of what is the fallout of a tech attack on some of these individuals who have come out and said that Apple has sent them this threat notification. B, the fact that NGO seemingly has connections to a person who has openly in the past said that the Narendra Modi government in Delhi is a problem, that it is anti-democracy and so on. Something's not surely adding up here. I mean, and as you said, Apple is the world's largest technology company. It prides itself on the safety of its products. Why would they, trust the safety of its products or leave the safety of its products to some unknown, NGO that's funded by a billionaire who clearly has political affiliations?
I mean, Zaka, this is really something that Apple has to answer, but I'm really confused by Sanjeev's comment. So, is the assertion we're making here that Apple didn't actually send out that message? Or is it that they sent out that message but mentioned some advocacy NGO that maybe people could turn to for advocacy rights, I assume, and we have a problem with the way they're handling this? What is our exact problem? Are we doubting the fact that this message was sent at all? And then BJP's assertion that George Soros funds it, so therefore Congress party is involved in it because George Soros is Rahul Gandhi, is what they've been saying all day. Is then the assertion that We made Apple send this message out so we could create this bogey. Do you see how convoluted this logic is? It's just making no sense to me why we're even debating it.
Basri Suraj, what then is the contention? Is the BJP saying this whole thing was fictitious, that the members of parliament who claimed that they got this threat notification from Apple, they cooked this whole thing up? Or Access Now was sending some kind of impersonation on behalf of Apple? What is the contention that you're making? Because you're the only ones who are making this connection: George Soros, Access Now, and Apple threat notification.
The contention is that all aspects need to be investigated. I'll just respond to what Mohanji said. Mohanji said that it is a sophisticated attack. That doesn't make it automatically a state-sponsored attack, that too a Modi government-sponsored attack. In fact, especially when it is, and I'm quoting Apple's words, the threat intelligence is often imperfect, incomplete, and perhaps sometimes even false alarms, which is what Mr. Apar Gupta also said on your panel. Which means that everything needs to be investigated. Whether it is the aspect of George Soros funding Access Now, which is the tech support in this particular case, or Omidyar's role, or it is the role of Apple sending these alerts to the alleged opposition leaders. Every aspect needs to be investigated, and look at the commitment of the Modi government about security protocols and about privacy. The Honorable Minister came on record yesterday itself and set up a technical investigation on this particular aspect. So Apple needs to join with all the relevant material, and then, of course, we can get to the bottom of it.
Okay, I'll give the final word to Apar Gupta. Again, what is confusing for our viewers, Apar, is the world's biggest technology company has sent out this threat notification. No one is, doubting the genuineness of the threat notification. Yes, Apple did send this to some of the individuals concerned, but why is the help that these people have been requested to take linking them to an NGO which, as the BJP is claiming, has dubious linkages?
So, Zaka, I provided a part of that answer in my first response. I'll just like to focus on what happens now and next. I think when you asked also Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal pointed questions, he said, I don't know, quote unquote, I'm just asking questions. So I don't know what they're floating here. Let me just focus on this inquiry which is happening. Okay, now this is a technical inquiry which has been set up under the Computer Emergency Response Team, which is actually reporting to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. The allegation here is opposition leaders have been hacked or attempted to be hacked by the government of India. Now, the appointments, salaries, entitlements of these officers in certain is determined by the minister in charge. The minister, Mr. Vaishnav, yesterday in a press conference calls these allegations frivolous, which is prejudicing this investigation. Now, I want to just ask, how can this be an impartial investigation? This is limited, and it is not also under the Commissions of Inquiry Act. I think the only proper recourse is an independent, transparent investigation which focuses on not only examination of the phones.
No, but who is going to do that transparent, independent investigation?
Not only examination of Apple.
You did the Pegasus investigation by Supreme Court appointed technical committee.
Yes,
what came of it?
Yes, but there's
what came of it? Nothing came of it.
No, the case is pending. The report has not yet been released.
The order said that the 29 phones were examined and none of it had Pegasus spyware.
Yes, and the government did not cooperate.
Yes, they said that as well. Yes, absolutely.
In which, so all I want to say is that if the government, I'm not saying the court, I'm saying if the government by itself is serious, as Minister Vaishnav says, they will also summon the cabinet secretary as well as other arms of the government for clear answers. Okay. After all, they have nothing to hide and they can clearly state they have not procured spyware or used it on the opposition.
All right, we'll leave it at that.